going to start the recording. Hello, everybody. It is March 8th, 2021, 9:18 a.m. on the Pacific Coast, and this is the bi-weekly meeting for the Inclusive Naming Initiative. We are currently still TBD for a code of conduct, but that is imminent. Regardless, please treat each other as if you were following a formal code of conduct and be excellent to one another. Hooray, Priyanka is here. I'm so glad to see you.
Hey, Jim, Monica, and I were on a different Zoom, so I don't know exactly what was going on, but
we changed the meeting invite over from my personal Zoom to the Inclusive Naming Initiative Zoom.
oh.
So so chaos.
Gotcha.
So Priyanka, I know you had something you wanted to talk about today.
Yes.
So
hold on.
Yep.
Hang on. Before we get into that, let me cover some administrative things because it could be a long discussion.
Yeah, I'd also like to give Dale a bit of time to talk about Take Two as well.
Yeah, I can go last.
A lot of time.
A
lot of time. Okay. Okay. Stephen, take it away.
All right. So first off, you may have noticed in the Zoom chat right now, there is a bit.ly link to a new agenda doc. Please use that one instead. The old one is blanked out and will point you there anyway. So you should be fine there. In terms of editing access to docs, right now, because that new doc is under within the Google Workspace shared drive, the domain administrator, infra admins, leads, and another group have automatic access to this. Included in that is the inclusive naming at googlegroups.com address. If you are on that address, you will have edit access to this doc moving forward. If you are not able to access this doc, it's because you're not on the mailing list. So please join the mailing list to resolve that issue if you're having it. I've also added Zoom information for the meeting right up front, dial-in codes and all that good stuff. Again, we are on a new meeting. The new meeting is under the Inclusive Naming Initiatives Zoom account now, which means everything will be in one place when we do recordings. So for workstream leads, please note you will already have access to the to all of the information that you need to be able to log in to pull your meetings and whatnot. If you don't, please let me know. I've sent that in a previous email. What I did with the Zoom accounts is I added another license. So there's one that has basically like user access, and there's another one that has admin access to Zoom now. The admin access one will be used to spin out the general meeting and the leads meeting, and the user will be used for all of the workstream meetings. So it'll have access to pop in, pull recordings and all that good stuff. If we need more Zoom accounts, we can totally get into that, but I think that we can probably manage with 2 licenses. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to bare bones on Zoom unless we need to get fancier. I know that Joanna, you had opened an issue requesting 2 features. The first being co-host, and I thought co-host was enabled by default on Zoom. It was not. That has been fixed, and it is enabled across the org. So for workstream leads, please, when you claim host for your meetings, please also assign a co-host to assist with moderation. And in general, just to be your backup. For this second feature, I don't know what it does. Can you tell me more? Call me.
Yeah, so so if somebody doesn't have a great internet connection and they want to dial in by phone, instead of having to dial the number and then put in the meeting ID and then put in the passcode, Zoom just calls your phone for you. You just type in your number and then Zoom will call you. So it makes it easier to connect by phone. It is a premium feature though, so you might have to pay to get that feature enabled.
Yeah, so we're on a pro account. It's actually, I think it's actually a different plan altogether. You have to add a phone plan. I was poking at it a little bit, and let's see if we can manage without it for now. I'm not saying that we can't buy it, but if we go into the we want licenses per work stream lead, and then we also want phone plans for each of the work stream leads. I'm not sure it's a thing that we need immediately. So the dial-in numbers are available in the meeting notes as well, and y'all can copy the invitations. I think you have all of the invitation information for each of the work streams. But let's see, I'm going to keep the issue open for now. The co-host thing is solved. I'll keep the issue open for Call Me, and we can revisit to see if it's causing pain. More administrivia. All right, there is a Google group now called WSL-all, which has no, outside of the domain administrator, there are no actual humans on that list. The list is basically for, the list includes all of the work streams and the leads, mailing lists, and that is basically so that I can use it for IAM for Google Sheets and stuff, right? So as well as send you notes. So if you are if you are a workstream lead and you are starting to add, I noticed that you're starting to add people to your individual workstream mailing lists, which is awesome. Please note that the syncing process for owners and managers on the workstream groups is currently, I run a script. So just be aware if you're interested in adding owners and managers and they are not listed in the repo where I maintain the script, they will get deleted on the next reconciliation. So please reach out or please file an issue when you have people that you want to add that are going to be owners or managers. I turned off reconciling the members of the groups because that would have deleted a lot of people from the new groups. So just be aware of that. Please reach out to me if it's something that's related to Google Workspaces, Zoom, GitHub. Yeah, I'm working on GitHub administration next. It's not a solved thing yet, but I have some ideas. So if you have things that you want to see on GitHub, please let me know. If you are a workstream lead and you have not accepted my invitation for the GitHub org, please do so. I think outstanding right now are Joanna and Andre. So I think I'm done.
Thank you, Stephen, for taking care of a lot of the administravia. That actually does bring up a question, though, which is, it is not Stephen's stated desire to be the infrastructure manager for this project full time. But if you do love hacking on things like GitHub infrastructure and you're looking for a way to contribute, please get in contact with him and we'll talk. All right, Dale, hi.
Hi.
Hi, you
Can you
want to
hear
talk
me?
about take two?
Yeah.
I can. Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. So first I'll just give the team a quick overview of Take Two, and then I'll share the link. We had talked about this when we actually first founded this initiative. What tools would we put in the hands of communities who don't have open source tools to help with identification of language that's not inclusive? And Take Two is one of those that was contributed by a IBM team working on social justice, racial justice projects, and it's now it's now available on the Linux Foundation as well as in IBM Developer. It's co-hosted there. But I thought it would be good to just share sort of a quick overview of what it is, then you guys can go explore and tee up a couple of items for consideration so that as we think about what we are going to be doing with helping with tooling as one of our contributions from this initiative, we understand some of the roles we play beyond coders. So I'm looking to see if I'm actually, oh yeah, I can share content. So I will share my screen. and just do a quick overview of take two. So now, as I said, let me just make sure, are you guys able to see my screen? Not yet?
Not yet.
Is that yes or no?
No.
That's a no.
No.
Oh, okay, all right,
But
let
you know
me
what?
try.
Let me make you a co-host
Yeah,
just to see if that unblocks anything. All right,
Okay.
you've got the power. Go for it, Dale.
All right, I'll try one more time, see if I don't live. Okay. It thinks I'm sharing, so maybe I need to stop on my side and do it again. Okay, so. Okay, so I'm trying again, once more with feeling.
Unfortunately, still can't see you sharing.
Yeah, it says start broad. Okay, it's give me the countdown. That's a good sign, and I think we have liftoff.
Hooray!
Yeah,
I don't mean to be like
no, it's
patronizing. I
okay.
am genuinely happy.
No, sometimes it whiffs on me. Okay, so so as I said, Take Two came out of a challenge that we created called the Embrace Challenge, where we're embracing inclusion and diversity. And these are some of the folks who were part of the core team. I was actually hoping to have one of them join us to present today, but we'll get them another time. And basically, the problem they were looking to solve was for folks who are content creators, and whether it's code or learning or media of any kind, what do we have? What can we put in their hands to make it easy for them to scan and detect language that is that promotes bias? Specifically, what we're working on, at least from an inclusive IT language perspective, what they were thinking of is much broader, but code is definitely, and digital content in IT is definitely one of the scopes. So what they were looking at is this open source community-led tool that they would create a starter kit for, and then have the other contributors contribute to it. One of the contributors that they had in mind, one of the personas, is an expert advisory team of inclusive community leaders who have done some work to vet terms and who could contribute a directory of terms and their replacements to help those who are working on replacing their language. And this is really just to discover at this point. There are some AI components in it, but basically the way it works is there's a browser extension that allows a trusted contributor, and that's key, right? What we don't want is people submitting terms that are not inclusive and saying, or that are inclusive, right? That do not promote bias and saying that they are biased terms. Simple one would be replace all instances of the word Black or all instances of the word white. And yes, we have seen people submit those proposals. So a trusted contributor, there's a classifier to classify the term. And then there's an API that allows users to check against a machine learning model, which is really a minimum viable product right now, but it uses AI. There was some linkage to our AI fairness algorithms. And the goal is to ensure that, and I'm going to zoom my screen, finger zoom here, over to the top right, that if you actually have an occurrence of a term, it can be flagged. Now, one of the problems that we need help solving going forward, and what one of the extensions we would like to see coders contribute to, is not just if I found master, I would replace it. But if I found slave, is there a pairing of slave with master somewhere else in my documentation that I can find as well? So those are some of the use cases we're looking at. But when we were reviewing this with our legal teams, they brought up a couple of things, right? One is context, which is English is not the same everywhere in the world, right? And I don't know how many people are here who represent English spoke elsewhere. I actually come from a different country than the US, so I actually grew up with British English, but I know context can be different depending on where the language is spoken. So as we look at how is this going to be, how are terms that we're classifying and more importantly, replacing, how are those replacements going to be interpreted? That's one of the use cases we would like expert advisory groups like this, right? Or the language work stream more specifically to address. We also would like to make sure that there are ways to allow a community of contributors to contribute the data so that we have the collective wisdom of multiple contributors, right? This is a risk, right? That we aren't viewed as making any one company the authority on what is inclusive or not, but we represent a consortium of experts, and we continue to use those experts to validate that contributions that are identified as non-inclusive are, have some credibility. Because what we don't want is to lose credibility by saying that something is or is not inclusive, and someone says, well, who's IBM or Microsoft or VMware or Red Hat, etc., right, to make this judgment. So we have trusted advisors. That's a key aspect of this. And what I'm hoping is that our group, along with standards bodies that we're working with, would have the credibility to be considered an expert advisory group, which brings me to one topic, which is there anything we need to do to certify as a group that can contribute data to a tool like this? And I'm really looking from, the people who are in academia or in standards to say, okay, we're not just, making stuff up. It comes with some real credibility. And then for anyone who wants to take a tool like this and use it, whether it's Take-Two or some, version of it, how do we certify that the sources of the data that are being contributed are valid? And as we work through our different work streams, that's one of the things I would like us to think through, using this tool as a sort of a testing ground for what we're doing here. The other thing that was a little bit more of a more serious concern, and Stephen, this gets back to you, right? And what we're doing as part of infrastructure is if someone joins our group who is not a trusted contributor, what are the checks and balances that we have, and that a tool, someone who wants to adopt a tool like this can use to verify with, some level of secondary controls that the contributors to our data set are contributing, valid contents. So certification of or credentialing of the contributors is one question, and then the authorization and controls that we might want to put around a tool like this for anyone who wants to take it. Start maybe with our data set that we contribute, but then invite maybe another group of contributors to contribute to it. So that's the problem statement I wanted to lay out. We have a tool, one tool we can work with, but I would really like some feedback on, are there people who would like to work on these two issues with me or with a work stream, or whether Celeste, you'd like to expand the scope of the language work stream to tackle the problem of how do you determine that a group contributing content, not just within the, let's say the umbrella or the protection that this group provides, but when a tool like this is made available to, let's say, another community, what guidelines can we put in place? What controls, what checks to make sure that data being generated, whether it's for ads or media or other usages, other industries, not necessarily IT, have the right, controls around it. So that's really what this is about.
This is a
Questions or
super interesting
comments?
problem statement.
Yeah.
What an interesting problem statement. My first instinct is this is actually a question for the open source work stream, and maybe Stephen
Okay.
can agree or disagree. Because when you think about it in the context of a company itself, the company doesn't necessarily have that problem with verification on the same level, asterisks, if a company is very large, yes.
Agreed.
But like the idea of a company is, in theory, you trust everybody in the company to be good actors on behalf of that company. Whereas as soon as you open source something, that's where the problem of trust and verification comes in. Or for lack of a better word, social proof. Like you need to know that the person has some grounding for doing what they're doing. So this to me is like an open source process question. Stephen, do you have any thoughts?
So I disagree.
I love it.
So I see that we're kind of carving out two separate problems, right? The validation of the content, affirming that the content itself is content that we'd want to exist in a system, right? And then two, the people who can contribute the content, the way that the infrastructure is deployed, right? Those are two separate concerns. The first concern I see being definitely on topic for the language workstream. The second one would not necessarily be open source, because this is going to depend on implementation, right? If you deploy something like this internally, right? And internally, maybe infrastructure for your standards body. It may be infrastructure for your open source project, maybe infrastructure for your company. I think that that concern falls into the community and tooling bucket, right? How would we manage this, right? So to the infrastructure thing, do we want more people to help in the inclusive naming side? Like, absolutely, but not yet. I think that there is definitely a matter of building trust in this group. I would still consider the group to be nascent. So I do have a trust problem there, and I think that the comment on someone in your company being trusted, I don't necessarily think that's true. Right, so there's a matter of certification of the people who might be submitting content to the platform as well. So I think it cross-cuts both language and community and tooling. And I think that's, so another project that I'm poking at, and I think a few people on the call are poking at as well, is Rekor, right? Rekor is a transparency log. So if you've heard of blockchain, if you've heard of Merkle trees, so the idea that you can submit, the idea that if you make a change and submit a manifest for a piece of software, tooling, what have you, you can publish it somewhere, right? So broadly, what I would be imagining is that a change that flows through the system would be submitted to a transparency log, right? And what transparency logs do broadly is essentially make the data visible, right? It's still on consumers of the data and the people managing the infrastructure to develop policies around what is or isn't true about the data, right? So if there was a change to a set of manifests that controls the content that lives in the system, is the person who made the change an authorized user, right? And that is a policy-based decision that would be built in a separate system, but you would want to have it on some sort of auditable or introspectable place. So that's my 3-second idea based on what I've heard so far.
Hey, Dale, this is Andre. Quick question, because I like this slide. Help me understand. I think you're thinking the domain could be very large. So like a trusted contributor might be, I'm just thinking, in the legal domain, so that we would have experts. How do we know that they are actually people that can contribute within that domain or in different aspects? Is that how you're looking at it? So, above kind of the technical implementation of, do we have contributors that then know their area that might be giving us feedback for the rest of the system?
Yes, and we are, inclusive naming would be for inclusive IT language, maybe one expert advisory group, but there may be another group that's working on neurodiversity or maybe, or other types of biased terms that are not found in the IT domain, but in their domain. How do you determine the trusted advisors? And then the next piece, as Stephen, so that's problem number one, right? And then number two is if you are going to be building up these types of directories, and I like the example of a standards body, right? In whatever fields, how do you ensure that data is trusted? And the one analogy I will give that's happening today in the world of AI is they have created a project that is collecting all of the places where AI failed, in some cases with disastrous results. So they can use this as a study to retrain the AI models where there are gaps. And part of the design of this, right, once you get past who is trusted and verifying who has the credentials to contribute, is the next piece, which is did they get to what degree are they accurate, and how do you retrain when we got it wrong, right? Because even with a trusted group, we may still make mistakes. And part of the AI aspect of this is learning not just what is right and why it's right, but training the model for when is it wrong, why was it wrong. So we get, so the system gets smarter, not just the tool, but the people. So that's the other piece of it. Did that help? Yes, no? Confused?
Yeah, I thought that was really helpful.
Okay.
I know Joanna had a quick comment, but Joanna, do you want to go for it? And then I have some thoughts about this that connect into my next topic, so it's kind of perfect.
Okay.
But Joanna, I want to give you the opportunity if you want to give your comment.
Yeah, so I do see there's a tooling aspect to this. There's a language and content validation aspect of this. There is, I think, a governance framework and policy and procedures aspect to this, which certainly we could borrow frameworks from open source or from standards bodies for how to make this work. I mean, the ultimate goal here is trust and credibility. And I think governance plays a role in that too. And I am helping several AI machine learning oriented projects and organizations work through some of these issues. So I'm happy to have a brainstorming session, a separate brainstorming session on this, or contribute some ideas at another time.
That would be brilliant, Joanna. Thank you.
Absolutely. I would love to listen in as well, because as you said, it kind of goes into the governance of our initiative here. And that is my next topic.
Before you go into that,
Oh,
before you get into that, what I was going to say, Dale, is because this is like a slightly longer winded topic that we can't fully explore in this meeting. I think your next action is to post to the mailing list and ask for collaborators, and then spin up like a sub collaboration group. Because I don't want this to get lost, but we also have to move on like right now.
Okay, so the decision is it's not going to be part of a part of language, and it's not going to be part of open source. It should be separate.
Stephen.
Yeah, so
okay, because that's the first thing I wanted to figure out, right? Yeah,
my suggestion for next actions actually would be things that I forgot to mention in the administrivia portion of the agenda around so that one of the next things I want to do is I'm going to send out a doodle to the leads now that we have more leads to schedule a new time for the lead sync, and I think that it should be a topic for the lead sync.
That's a great
Right, because it does fall into governance, and in terms of how we're struck. Well, Priyanka's next topic.
Yeah. You know what? Listen to Stephen. He had a way better idea. Priyanka.
Yours was good too, Celeste. We can approach it many ways, but yeah, let's start there. Okay, so I wanted to talk about just governance and structuring of I&I. We see many lovely faces here, and that's excellent. Lots of us are really motivated and driven, but increasingly, with Take Two project being an example, as folks want to use us as a reference, as maybe things will get donated to us as an initiative, we need someone managing this structure, and there needs to be some legal entity. Right now, we're like nothing. We're not, which is, if you didn't know that, sorry to scare you, but that is the reality right now. So I mulled on what are the options for us. So right now, just so people understand the problem statement, all of this work, awesome work here is happening completely on a volunteer basis. The CNCF, which I lead, has been donating people time, my own, Celeste, and Chad, who does PR, etc., as well as any small costs that have come up. What I am seeing as things grow is that the needs, the needs for someone to focus on this, for someone to be owning this, being, let's say, a dedicated project manager or program manager, are only growing. And at the same time, we also have the conundrum of like, if someone is referencing I&I or wanting to donate something, whether it's documentation or code or anything to I&I, what is the construct? So given those, one proposal that I have brought forth, which is truly the path of least resistance and I think most efficiency from my perspective, is incorporating I&I as an independent project within the Linux Foundation projects service. It's this kind of like, the best way I can describe it is LF has set up this vehicle to allow initiatives like ours to get up and running quickly without having to go through all the legalese ourselves, without having to get like 501(c)(3) status and all that. And at the same time, we get our own identity. Of course, that means we go through LF Projects LLC as the parent company or whatever organization, whatever you want to call it. And so that's one legal structure. In terms of how it would mean, what it would mean in terms who runs things and who's in charge, a proposal again is to be very similar to actually how CNCF and other technical open source foundations run, where there is a effort-based sort of oversight committee or steering committee. Those are just anyone can come in and contribute and like rise up to be like a leader there. The example in this case that's parallel would be CNCF's Technical Oversight Committee, which has elected members on it, and then one of them becomes a chair, and then they work really hard to select projects to join CNCF and be the technical leaders of the community. And then on the other, like the flip side of that coin is the governing board, which is based on which people can join through by providing funding for the initiative, and also by elections if they are like junior members who like didn't really donate much or something. And so people get membership into I&I with like a small donation. And I have not figured out the exact dollar values or anything yet. I'm not trying to make this a multi-million-dollar corporation, but just something that sustains the costs. But there's like tiered levels, and like that comes with like elections to join the governing board. And that governing board, the job is to make sure that the leadership, the staffing, which would be a program manager and myself as the executive director, though if anyone else wants to apply for a job that will not pay you anything, you're welcome to, because I'm not going to be taking any money for it. But hey, if you want to, definitely apply. But anyway, so an executive director, some program staff, they utilize the money that's raised to make sure that they are supporting the I&I group and all the people here who would be the technical leaders to achieve our goals. And then they can do more marketing and like events and this and that to just like proliferate our mission. So that's kind of the high level of what so far has seemed like the best path forward. I've had conversations with like the earliest members of this community already, and I wanted to open it up to the larger group for conversation before I really go down the rabbit hole and like start working on the docs, etc. I see some comments here, so I'm going to look at that. Okay. Mark said +1. Don says +1 to LF. Andre says, can you share later /point all the legal structure, etc. elements which come as part of, as this will be needed for purchase companies.
Yeah, just to explain a little
Yes,
bit.
please.
Yeah, just as we take a more formal structure, if we go in that direction, just to have some information, because obviously as companies join, it becomes not necessarily individual voluntary. It's just understanding how companies are participating, what is the relationship, especially if there's an existing structure. And, with everything with governance, there's pros and cons. So, I think as a group, we want to go through, is it too early to have a very defined structure, or is it perfect timing that it's going to be beneficial, and which really makes sense at this time?
Absolutely. Yeah, the next meeting we have, or in the leads meeting, which Stephen's setting up with the doodle, actually, I can go over the details of the documentation of how thinking of setting it up. Just so you know, from my side, the big need for this, why I think we gotta do this now, is on some level, I feel like we're running on fumes. I feel like there's so much momentum and things we can do and get going on quickly, but the limiting factor is the time that what is the sort of de facto staff here, such as myself, Stephen, and Celeste, and are able to put in. And I want to fix that problem with dedicated staff. Not that these people will go away, but then there's someone who's pushing us forward. And on the marketing and PR side, I feel like Chad is donating some of his time, which is excellent. But I don't know how much exactly we can count on from donation. I'd rather just pay for PR and marketing services and get exactly what we want. But yes, so next leads meeting, expect a set of docs, if that works.
Yeah, so to what Priyanka said, and sort of to Dale's comment as well around pros, cons, and risks, if we do or don't kind of go the LF project route.
Yes.
And also in terms of Andre's comments around timing, do we need a formalized structure? I think we're definitely at the point where we do need to consider legal entities, because I know at least the language work stream is gearing up to accept recommendations from all of you that you may have produced in your own companies. And there are legal ramifications to quote unquote open sourcing that content, which is, we're taking those recommendations as an initial kind of data set, and then we're going to refine from there and make the group's recommendations. But there's credit involved, which is, for example, if Microsoft decides to contribute its word lists, does Microsoft want a citation on the website? Do we not want a citation on the website? Who owns the final product? How can that final project be distributed or used in a tool like Take-Two, which is kind of, housed in IBM right now, which is another totally separate legal structure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, one clarification.
Yeah.
Take-Two is not housed in IBM. It's an open source solution.
Cool. Yeah.
So that there's no IBM.
Yeah, totally.
ownership
And
there.
I apologize for that.
It's contributed by IBM initially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But it does sort of bring up another question of what is the distribution model? And how do we effectively make sure that people who are contributing things are getting the right attribution? The LF legal structure isn't perfect in a lot of ways, because it's nice that this is a neutral body that is volunteer driven. At the same time, leaning on the LF structure allows us to not think about some of these details as much.
That's really it.
Frankly, that's kind of the biggest advantage. And it's complicated. It's complicated. The other route that we kind of considered was also, what if we just set up our own LLC and went in our own direction? But that's also really, really expensive. And I think it's actually it net costs us less to be in the LF, but there are pros and cons to both. All right, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, so from my perspective, kind of on the admin aspect, when we set up things like GCP and GitHub and Zoom and all that fun stuff and Google Workspace, there are costs associated with that are currently going on my personal cards. And my thought process here was first around things like GitHub sponsors, right? They're, just in a very small venue idea, like there are places where people would like to sponsor this work, right? And should be enabled to, right? And I'm not saying that GitHub sponsors is an option, but like for that to happen, we do need to be a something, right? As more people jump into this project, we also have like the appointment of work stream leads, the appointment of executives, leadership for the initiative, where so far it's been largely first come, first serve, right? For like, if the interest is there, the opportunity is there, and we need to refine that process. So I do think the conversation around governance is kind of, the wheels are turning on it already. You will have noticed that we proposed an admin work stream, or there is an admin work stream that exists but doesn't really exist. The admin work stream is essentially Ed and I hacking on stuff in the background to make sure that from the technical perspective the project runs. That needs to be formalized. What we were thinking is having that evolve into what would be not necessarily a work stream, but a discussion around governance, right? Both from the legal mechanics or the project level mechanics, as well as the tooling. So yes, I think this should also be a topic for the leads meeting. In terms of what we do or don't do, I like doing less around legal things, or as little around legal things as possible from my personal perspective, and leaving that to the experts. I think that the LF has done this before, and they have mechanisms for doing this easily. I think that based on what I've reviewed from both the the steering committee angle as well as the governing board, it makes a lot of sense. I think that based on to Dale's point, I believe in the chat, that we do need to outline alternatives, pros, cons, risks, and what's the risk of not formalizing any of this stuff. And I think that the risk is extremely high, especially now that we have so many folks involved. Formalize a lot of the process.
I would also, thank you, Stephen. I would also like to add that I think one risk is opportunity cost. Excuse me. So this is like not scientific, so it's more like gut feeling, but I'm just noticing and sensing a lot of fervor in like, oh, you're doing I&I, can we talk to you? Oh, can we donate this thing or that thing? I'm sensing this is the opportunity to get memberships in and get people to like make this a real entity for at least 2-year runway. And it's time, like it's a good time to capitalize on that interest. There are moments in time when things are more popular versus not, for better or worse reasons. And I am sensing this is now. So without an entity, we can't raise any money or do anything. So that's the opportunity cost that I see as well. I know we are officially over and lots of people got a drop. But I think Dale, you were saying a final point.
No, I was just saying, those are good points. And I'll give an update at the leadership meeting, but really briefly. You just made the point that I experienced on Friday. I took a prospective new member who's a significant large enterprise through our site and what we do. And they said, oh, it's a grassroots operation. You guys don't have a charter. You don't have, and so, and I could, see a little bit of diminishing interest. I managed to say, okay, here's how where we contribute, but we are looking at this topic. So I do think that, shows that there is interest. There is a need to have some more formality. I think that the devil is going to be in the details, right? What are we, let's document, outline, what does it include? What are the implications, pros, cons, and the risk if we don't do it, right? Also the opportunity, as you said. I think you said it well. Thank you. Thanks for that.
No, absolutely. Awesome. And Celeste, anything you want to say? I think we're good on this.
I'm here to wrap it up. The next people who are going to see a bit more detail are people who are involved in the leads meeting, and we will keep the rest of the group posted. Thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and week.